Welcome to the Leading Conversations podcast, sponsored by the Excel Leadership Network. On each episode, JD Pairing will have conversations with church planting pastors and leaders from around the country. You can learn more about how to connect with Excel at the end of this podcast. Let's join JD now and listen in on this leading conversation.
Welcome back to the Excel Leadership Podcast, Leading Conversations. We're continuing our conversation today with Brian and Sarah Drinkwine from Corona, California. Hey, how did church planting pop into your lives? I mean, it sounds like you're kind of a legacy. Your dad was a church startup guy, but how did that happen for you two?
After we got married, we wanted to be closer to her family, which is out here in Southern California, but we didn't want to be too close. We wanted to establish ourselves. So we moved to Phoenix. So we could, it's a day drive, but not too crazy. And was at a church there for like 5 years and absolutely loved it. It was awesome. I was doing youth ministry and, but the longer I was doing that, and the previous ministry settings were the same way. It was always startup situations, it'd always be like, hey, our youth ministry got crushed by the last guy. We need somebody to start from scratch and basically start everything all over. Can you help us? And so that was like the third ministry that I had the opportunity to do that with and just start everything from the beginning. And I got to where I was like, man, this is what I love. I love starting from nothing or next to nothing, and if there isn't much, I'd almost rather go ahead and wipe that slate clean too, And so our lead pastor there was he was another guy that really invested in me, poured into me, loved me deeply, and saw that in me. And I started to dream about church planting at one point, and he affirmed that and encouraged me. And I also got to where I started wanting to go back to Nashville at the time. And so, and Nashville is a funny city because it's been one of the fastest growing cities in the country for, a while now. And the outer side, the outer rings of Nashville, the suburbs and everything, heavily church, very Bible Belt, but downtown and all the urban core is just like any other really unchurched, highly unchurched city. And so the stats become deceiving because usually you're looking at the whole city and not downtown. So we wanted to be closer to downtown. And so we moved back to Nashville. I did a 1-year residency and we got to do life with 2 other church planting couples for a year before we got started. We got surrounded by some influences that really pushed us to away from the models of church ministry that I had always kind of been trained up in. And that was like, get away from attractional, just do house churches, and so, which is awesome. So that's what we did. And it was an amazing experience in a lot of ways. And we are constantly remembering back to some of the sweetest ministry memories that we've ever had. It also, at the same time, exposed every leadership weakness that I have. And I realized I felt like the seminary grad that, goes into ministry and realizes they didn't train me for this. And I wasn't trained for that. I was trained for something else. And I'm very appreciative for the experience that I had. By all intents and purposes, it was a quote unquote successful church planting experience. But I walked away I always tell people I got my teeth kicked in, I got owned and it was very lonely. I hurt a lot. All of my insecurities came out in that experience. Our marriage was under attack. We did a lot of therapy. But we also, it was just such a trade-off. You see we see our church We were reaching people that never, ever would have ever stepped in the doors of a traditional church model, but at the same time, I'm much more comfortable in a room of 100 people than 10. And I had hated that about myself, to be honest. I felt guilty about that. Like I felt like there was something wrong with me for feeding off of a larger room. And in a lot of ways, that's why I jumped to that model, because I felt like, in a way, that it was that I was kind of doing a purer version of what ministry is supposed to look like. But in reality, I think I was trying to just fill another void, and trying to make up for another insecurity, and trying to, ultimately become somebody that I really wasn't, that wasn't my leadership type. And so I was losing a lot of the joy in that. And eventually God opened the door for us to move on. So we, moved out of that ministry.
Hey, let me just interrupt. Sarah, how was that experience for you?
Yeah, a little different. So we were both bivocational when we were starting that church up. He was driving Uber and I was serving at a restaurant.
Uber's great for church planting, by the
downtown. And that's how we met people. And so to me, the relational side was, to me, that was the win, is you had people coming over to our house. We got really good at throwing parties. We had this tiny, crappy little home built in the 1930s that was, like right outside of the downtown circle. And, but we had people there from all walks of life that would never go to a church. And so we were having the conversations of, what is Jesus, who is Jesus and what does it look like to follow Jesus with people that, were like, yeah, okay, well, I'll come and I'll have a relationship with you. And to me, that was awesome. But it also was, kind of an uphill climb the entire time, because we just didn't have a lot of the support that we needed. We were reaching people who didn't understand church, right? And who didn't understand tithing, and who didn't understand like coming every Sunday. And so, so to try to go out and get some support from other churches, and we got some, but maybe just not in the way that we really needed it. But anyway, baby number one came shortly after that. And I was also in a master's program at the time. So I was there for the relationships, but not really able to help with any of the like forming anything, because I was doing a million things. I was still waiting tables when I was 8 months pregnant. I was, in a master's program. And then I had my first baby, and it was a lot of chaos.
It was crazy.
That's the frontline apostolic church planter story, though, complete with the tiny, crappy little house. I mean,
oh yes, yeah, and it was terrible. It flooded multiple times. Yeah, we loved that house.
You probably look back fondly on that, though, right?
Do we?
We didn't like that house.
You're not old enough yet, man. Once you get a little older,
well, again, like you talked about, Brian, about like other people's expectations, and that was an expectation. Like we got married, right? And so it was like, what was the first thing you do? Well, you buy a house, and so we bought what we could afford at the time, and
what we could afford was.
And looking back, it's like, maybe that wasn't the.
We had the same house in Colorado, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, I think the sweetest memories there were we kept getting people in our house churches that were like, their questions were very different. They could care less about if you're Calvinist. They could care less about, like nuances. They're like, well, what do I do if I have a Jewish, this was one of our good friends. What do I do if I have a Jewish background, but I think I'm gay, and he's like, I'm actually atheist, but I'm here and we're talking about Jesus, so help me out. And those were the best conversations, that we just, and so refreshing. And to see people at, they're at the foundational level of talking about Jesus, and it was just beautiful. It was awesome. That part of it was awesome. The rest of the time I just cried.
Wow. So then you had this opportunity to go to Santa Cruz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's the deal. Don't ever turn down an opportunity to go to Santa Cruz.
No,
Never.
Great.
Never. Yeah.
It was a respite.
It was. We had a friend of mine that we served together when we were in Phoenix, and he was up at this church, and it was another, like, their youth ministry had been blown up and took half the church, away, and the church had, they were just in a rough spot. So, but I was like, I don't want to do youth ministry necessarily, but I kind of want to break. And so they let me come rebuild the youth ministry as part of my thing. And then the rest of the time I got to do revisioning process for the staff and walk back through, let's find our vision as a church, and let's find out why we're here, and, learn how to become an outward focused church again. And it was really, really sweet. It was really nice to live blocks away from the beach and, be like, man, I'm really stressed out. You know what? Let's get the little beach wagon and let's walk over to the beach and just spend time over there. I mean, it was awesome, but it was also the most expensive place I've ever lived. I have no idea why we were paying whatever, $3,200 a month for an 800 square foot apartment, 2 bedrooms.
Welcome to Northern California.
I know, it's terrible. Where we're at now is expensive, but that was just ungodly.
So this church in Southern California calls, and you actually turned that into a church plant. How'd that happen?
Oh yeah. It's funny. People are like, man, when you tell your story of church planting and then you're like, and now we're doing it again. Why would you do it again? We sort of backed into it. So
So I'm from Corona. My parents are still here.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got the call of a church in Corona, it was like, oh, okay, well, that's, that's where my family is. Like there's familiarity there. We come here every year for Christmas, whatever. So
there was a church that, had a few hundred people a few years ago. Their pastor was retiring. And so they were like, we need, we want fresh vision. We want to, kind of plow into a new era for our church. COVID's been hard. We've basically been shut down, all that kind of thing, like everybody. And when we got it, so anyway, long story short, I was like, yeah, let's do it. We'll get back over there. We're having our second child. We can have the grandparents nearby, all that fun stuff. This will be great. And then as we get down here, we realize that things are a lot harder, and just the church had been impacted in far worse ways than we imagined. And, some of those things, maybe they knew about. Some of it, they weren't even aware, because sometimes when you've declined to that point, you don't even realize what's happened. And in the middle of a pandemic, you have something to blame everything on. And so, it's like, well, the pandemic will lift and then we'll be fine. But then we start looking at it and realize the church is literally going to die. And you don't even know it. And so what we did was I knew we were going to have to think like a church plant. I wasn't sure if we were going to have to do a church plant or if we could actually just turn around the thing that was there. And so we walked with everybody that was a part of that for a 40-day prayer journey, asking God, what do you want us to do? Do you want us to try to rebound this thing, or just basically shut it down and plant a church in the area? And over the course of that, I mean, the people in our congregation said, you know what, that's what we want to do. We want to plant a new expression. Let's go ahead and kind of let this go. Obviously, not everybody was excited about that, So the way we did it was we just said, if anybody wants to join a launch team, we're going to start a launch team, and we're going to go ahead and let this church finish. And so we honored that. We did a handful of gatherings with people just to like thank God for the years of ministry that had already taken place, which I think was helpful for some of the people that were grieving the loss of their church. But then we really needed to start a launch team separately because we needed this to not just be the same people turning around and replanting. And so we were able to do it that way. So about 15 people ish, came with us. And we started meeting in a living room, like a lot of, you hear those stories. No, we met in the living room. And so we met in the living room for a while and we did launch training, we basically did everything from the ground up. We dissolved that 501c3 and kind of redrew all the everything. And yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Brian, because I think that's a model that's going to be more and more likely going forward. And especially, just with COVID, just with generational changes. So thanks for sharing how you did that. Talk about, I know you just recently launched. How's it going?
Well, the real answer?
Yeah.
Man, it's okay. So the good side is it's been awesome in terms of just how God has been so faithful and to sustain us. We launched about a month ago. And the timing on a calendar looked awesome because we were like, hey, you're like, let's launch, January, like you got Easter coming up, we can build momentum, and so like in my strategic brain, it looked great. I didn't think about when I was thinking about that, I didn't think about how Christmas and the holidays was going to affect the COVID thing again. And I wasn't anticipating Omicron. So, we've got like close to 30 people on our team, and we only had 11 of our launch team at our own grand opening. It was crazy because everybody either had COVID or somebody in their family had COVID or somebody at work had COVID. And so they're all quarantining. Everybody's quarantining. And we had an RSVP system. About 40% of those backed out, same reasons. We were like, man, so we still had like 139 people at our grand opening. So turnout wise, I was blown away. I thought it was just gonna be us and our team. and it, so many people did. I think the coolest part of this being just a few weeks in, and we've got challenges, but the coolest part has been watching people, it's not been a lot of new believers. It's been people who have been disconnected from the church for a long time, and now they're reconnecting, and people who are experiencing life in their faith journey again. And I think the coolest part was there's a friend of ours who I shouldn't say the coolest. There's a lot of coolists, but one of our friends who they have a kiddo in the same preschool as our daughter, and so we invited them, and they've been coming. And he sent me a text and was like, "Hey, we found our home and everything," and that's just been really awesome to see them find a home. But then he's bringing other people, and every week he's walking away telling me just how deeply impacted he is, and he sends me he calls me and says, it was like a week or two after our grand opening, and he says, "Hey, I just finished Proverbs. What should I read next?" And he's never spent extended time in the Bible, and so here he is. He's spending extended time in the Bible, and watching him and his faith just be ignited, knowing that he wasn't, he hasn't been to a church in a long time. And so it's just really cool to see that, to watch other people who are, don't seem to find a home in the local church have been finding a home in our church. My hairdresser and her wife and their child showed up. We have other neighbors, 2 ladies in our neighborhood who are a couple, and they showed up. And so we seem to be finding an inroad with the LGBT community. We seem to be finding, I think our biggest challenge right now is probably that we have an insane amount of Hispanic families. And my wife and I are not Hispanic. So we're pulling people into our team, to help us bridge that cultural divide. But we have a very diverse group on our church family is definitely under 50% white. And that's an amazing, I think, act of God. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Hey, thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for going for it, and really good timing starting at the peak of Omicron, where church attendance was probably the worst it's been since before the country was founded. But let me just ask one last thing. Give us your best leadership tip. You've been at this for a while. What would you say to the leaders out there?
Oh, man.
Sarah, you can go too, either one of you.
I wish I'd have written that one down.
A leadership tip?
Yeah, what would you say to leaders? You get one shot.
Okay, so here's what I would say. Really do some self-examination of how God's created you, how he's wired you as a leader. Really figure out what your leadership gifts are. Go do some counseling, do a bunch of assessments, really find your voice. Don't jump into ministry. Don't jump into a lead role in your 20s. Wait, wait a bit, find yourself first. And then when you step into your church ministry and you plant a church, if you're going to plant a church, plant a church that complements your leadership gifts. Plant a church that lights your fire, and that you get up every morning and you go, man, this is what I was made for. This is what I was wired for and gifted for. Because if you jump in too early, or if you, in our case, in our Nashville experience, we kind of adopted models that were not necessarily, and we loved it, and it's huge, for us, for our journey. But I'm very grateful for that experience, because it taught me, I think, a lot about truly being who I am, being comfortable in my own skin, understanding what God's called me to, and embracing that.
Great stuff. Anything to add, Sarah?
I guess my tip would be advice, I guess, that I'm trying to follow myself right now, which is, if you're a leader, then just lead.
Yeah.
Stop waiting for someone else to do it for you. Stop, giving all the excuses of why it would just be better if someone else did it.
Yeah.
If God's wired you that way, then it's because you're supposed to be doing something. You're supposed to be leading. I think my journey has just been finding how that looks for me. Co-leading, leading alongside. When you're married to a really strong leader, then what does that mean for you? Does that mean you just stop leading and just kind of let him do everything? Or do you just find your unique ways? And so I lead in other ways. He does the church stuff, and I throw the parties that bring everyone to our house so that we can have those relationships and have people want to show up to our church. I don't just go around asking people, hey, we're doing this church plant, you should come. I first go, hey, I'm doing a big Irish St. Patrick's Day dinner. Do you want to come? So that's what I do. So I'm still learning on how, my leadership complements Brian. I think we're still.
Well, I think our biggest,
learning that.
One of our big challenges, we went to Assess or Discovery Center, and
nice catch there. Nice catch.
Yeah, I know, right? We did the the Strength Finder piece, and we were doing the whole G1, G2. So like, what are your leadership gifts? And she was the only G4 in the room. And I'm like, I think a G2 or a G3 or something.
Three.
So
Three.
it was I 3. Oh, yay. So I'm feeling awesome, while we're there, until I realized that my wife has the most leadership capacity of anybody there. And so that's a hard piece too. Like, we have to, I think as a married couple, we have to really lean hard into our marriage and remain unified in that. And also just, I think, affirming each other in our leadership. And for me, leading a church, being in technically the lead role, knowing that I'm not the strongest leader, is very humbling. So, yeah.
Well, thank you too for leading. Thanks for doing this the second time. I like to say anybody who plants a second time is pretty much brain dead.
Thanks.
And we did 3. So I don't know what that says. But thank you. Thanks for what you're doing. We're really excited about what's happening down there. Keep it up. Keep leading. Keep learning. And thanks so much for being with us today.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dee.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Leading Conversations podcast. We hope that you found it both helpful and encouraging. At Excel Leadership Network, our focus is on the church planter rather than the church. If you'd like to find out more about us, visit our webpage at excelnetwork.org. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. See you next time with another Leading Conversation.